Yeah, g'day YouTubers, Tinker O'Toole again here with another video. Went out and bought another 2 kg splitting axe from Cyclone. This is exactly the same, the only thing difference is the overstrike protector. This one's rubber, this one is stainless steel, which is much better. I got this for a friend of mine. He brought it to me and said, could I fit an overstrike protector on it and could I check the bevel edge on it? I said, yeah, sure. So I went to split some timber with it and I found out that even though it's 45 degrees, which is good, it split quite good, but there was a little bit more bouncing in it. This one is a lot sharper because I reprofiled this because this was about 60 degrees. So what I'm finding out is, and it doesn't matter whether you buy a real expensive brand, I bought the Oxenkoff from Still, and I find out that you can get a variation of the beveled angle, especially if they're doing it on a linishing belt, and I'm pretty sure that they are, because you can see that it's not a machine finished, and you can find out that the width of the bevel is different from one side to the other side, or if you hold it up and you can find out that the beveled angle has got a different angle on one side, the left side can be different to the right side by even up to 10 degrees. So some guy on there is linishing them because it's quite easy to tell, because if it was a machined angle, like this is machined, so they are identical. So on all the splitting axes of the Cyclones, there was about 14 in the rack. Where I see the big difference is the beveled angle can vary between splitting axe and splitting axe. And that means that somebody is doing the bevel by hand on a linishing belt. This one was 45 degrees, slightly blunt, but still works okay. But if you want to improve the performance in Australian hardwood, you need to sharpen this up and get it a little bit sharper. Why? When a lot of the times they turn around and say that a splitting maul or a splitting axe works better if it's blunt. Well, that may be the case in soft timbers like Pinus radiata, which is pretty easy to split. Don't have to worry about the angle, the beveled angle too much as well. I'm talking about totally different timber. Australian eucalypt hardwood is small fibres from 0.5 millimetre to about 1.5 millimetres in length. It's twisting, it's interlocking, it can be knotty. It is terrible stuff to split open. So the first thing that you need to do is that this part has to enter the wood. The blunter it is, the harder it is to enter the wood. So the sharper it is, the more it's easy to start. And I use that word, to start the splitting process. By the time you start the splitting process, that, if you look at the cheeks, this angle here will bust it open. But you have to enter the timber in the first place. And that's why it's better slightly sharper rather than blunt, so that it can start the split-in process. Now, the other thing is, when I went to the local store, there was about 14 in the rack. And I know these are done on a linishing belt because when you look at them, if they were done on a machine, like these edges that are here, then you would find out that these are identical because it's done on a machine. If these edges were done on a machine, they'd be identical, and they're not. You can even find out that it could be 5 millimetres one side, 6 millimetres the other side. You could turn it over the other side, totally different again. That's the problem when you're doing it in mass production and you've got some guy that are putting these on a linishing belt. You can end up with any angle. So that's the problem. So what I like to do, this one was okay. This was about 45 degrees. It's just that it's not sharp enough. This was about 60 degrees when I got it. I had to reprofile it and bring it back to about 45 degrees. 45 degrees isn't too bad. 45 degrees is better than 60 degrees because with a shallower angle, it's got more, and especially if it's a little bit sharper, it's got more chance to penetrate with less energy. So when you have it blunt, and it's got a large angle like 60 degrees, it's going to require more energy to start the split-in process. Yes, we know that it doesn't cut the timber, it splits the timber, but you've got to get in there in the first place to start the split-in process. And that's why it's better if it's got a sharper edge and it's got about a 45-degree angle on it. Even 40-degree angle's good. But you certainly don't want really 60 degrees and upwards. 60 degrees is about the maximum that I would go for, but I do prefer around 40, 45, because that will make it a lot easier and require less energy to get this into the round and start the splitting process. Also, when you do split any logs or any rounds, try and work on the edges rather than work in the middle. You see a lot of people trying to bust them open and they work in the middle. That's even going to take more energy to bust it open. And try and split with the growth rings as well. So just to briefly recap, yes, your splitting maul, if it's blunt, can work fine. This one's blunt, it works okay. But if you take the time to get a file and sharpen it up a little bit, you don't need it razor sharp. You just need it to be a little bit sharper. You don't need it razor sharp. You don't need it so that it's going to cut yourself, but you need a decent edge on there that will make it a lot easier for this to penetrate the wood and start the splitting process. And that's what it's all about, to make it easier splitting the rounds open in the first place rather than bounce off. So if your splitting maul or splitting axe is doing more bouncing than splitting, investigate whether it's got the right angle between 40 to 60 degrees, and at least run your finger along it and say, well, is it sharp or blunt? If it's blunt, you only have to give it a little bit of a file. And what's the worst case scenario? The worst case scenario is it doesn't make much of an improvement. Then if it doesn't, well, you haven't lost anything. But I would guarantee that the sharper it is, especially in Australian hardwood, because of the short fibres that are between 0.5 millimetre and 1.5 millimetres in length, they're twisted, they're interlocking, and they really hold in tight. And the whole idea of using a splitting axe or a maul is to get into that timber in the first place and bust it open, and try and find a crack if possible. And as I said, work with the growth rings around the log and stick to the edges. Don't put the axe too deep into the log. Try and stick to the edge and bust around the log, and you'll bust them open, and you'll find out that it's easier to do that. It's a great cardio workout. That's why I actually like busting, splitting timber. I do have a hydraulic splitter. I probably split 70% of me timber and with a hydraulic splitter, and the other 30% I'll do it by hand because I enjoy the exercise, and do a couple of wheelbarrows every day until I get through it all. Anyway, thanks for watching. Bye for now.